Welcome to CX Talks Fintech Virtual Fireside Chat. I'm your host, Alex C. The fintech industry is facing a multitude of vital challenges, from regulations, security, and data privacy, the emergence of new tech, new customer behaviors, and more. Today, we're talking about the critical intersection of fintech and customer experience with our guest speaker, Nikos Theodorou, Director of Payments at Remote, and our moderator, Lucas Turcomanis, CX Consultant at New Sage Ventures. Let's start the conversation on disrupting fintech.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another CX Talks Fireside Chat Fintech edition, where we discuss all things fintech. I am joined today by Nikos Theodorou, Senior Director of Payments at Remote. Nico, thank you very much for your time and welcome.
Thank you, Luca. It's a pleasure to be here and excited for our conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Before we start, why don't you give us a quick intro of yourself and what you do?
Definitely. So my name is Nikos Theodore. Like you said, I'm originally from Greece, but now live in San Francisco. I'm the Senior Director of Payments at Remote. I've been with the company for about a year, and I lead all aspects of payments there, which is partnerships, operations, strategy development, product development, so on and so forth. Prior to Remote, I was with eBay for about 3 years, where I led cross-border payments as eBay transitioned away from PayPal and into the in-house managed payment solution. I think most people are going to be familiar with eBay, so I'll just talk about Remote for a quick second for those that are not familiar with the company. Remote is a company that empowers and allows other companies to hire, manage, pay employees and contractors around the world. We have three primary products, one that's called Employer of Record, one for contractors, and one for global payroll. And all of those, again, are about allowing companies to manage international workforce. In the EOR, or Employer of Record model, we essentially hire folks through our local entities in 70 plus countries. And then for the contractors, we allow our customers, which are again corporates, to manage and pay contractors in 150 countries. So my background is generally in two-sided marketplaces where you have to think about both the pay-ins and the payouts, though with slightly different context between my current job at Remote and what I did before when I was at eBay.
Thank you so much for that. It's a great timing as well in the market for a service like that. A lot of people are trying to go remote. Um, so, um, Speaking of which, we did a study recently, and we found that many fintech leaders around the world, with in different size companies, um, they have different challenges and different things on their mind. Obviously, this is a challenging environment that we are in right now. 2022 was not very friendly to fintechs and to the market in general, and 2023 is here with us. So, with that in mind, what's top of mind for you in the year ahead? What kind of challenges will remain from the last year, and what new adventures should we await for in the year ahead?
Definitely. And it's a good way to start the conversation. I think the trends that we're going to see throughout 2023 are going to be very similar to what we have seen over the past few years. Payments are becoming more and more defiant of borders. They're becoming global. And that's really following, like you said, what the e-commerce landscape, the economy, and just employment is, what those kind of industries are going in general. Everything's becoming more global, and payments have to follow that trend. We're moving away from pure domestic marketplaces, purely domestic models, to truly globalized payments that thrive on basically just ensuring cross-border payments run smoothly. With that in mind, there's a couple of major elements to keep in mind as we think about globalized payments and cross-border payments. There is the regulatory aspect. There is the localization of those payments. And lastly, there is another underlying layer, which I always find companies face difficulties, which is how you bring all of this together internally and reconcile the different payments that are going on. So let's unpack each one of them a little bit more, starting with the regulatory piece. Payments as an industry is a very heavily regulated space. There's different perspectives around the world in terms of how innovation is driven. For example, in Europe, in many ways, innovation is driven through regulation with initiatives like PSD2 that the European Union introduced a few years ago. But the truth remains that when someone wants to engage in payments, they have to keep in mind that it is a very heavily regulated space, and there's no uniform regulation around the world. There's different ways that a US regulator versus a European regulator versus a Singaporean regulator approaches payments, and what are the standards that they want the companies that engage in money movement activity to follow. Now, for someone that, again, is entering the space and how you want to grow it, that's really where the challenges come into play. How do you adhere to all the different local requirements? Do you go and build something by yourself? Do you partner with somebody? And how do you make sure that you remain compliant as you grow your payment footprint and your payment product? With payments, this following saying is very true. It is very easy to go live. It is very difficult to remain live in the market, especially when it comes to regulation and ensuring that you have the right tools in place to adhere to all the different regulations that exist globally. Taking the next topic now around localization of payments, this is true for both if we think about a two-sided marketplace, there's always the money coming in and there's the money going out. And for both of this, the overall theme and trend are very similar. You want to keep it very relevant for the person that is either trying to pay into the marketplace or for the recipient of the marketplace into their country. When it comes to money coming in, it's very much about understanding, as you want to grow your global footprint, about what are some of the must-haves that customers in different countries want. At Remote right now, for example, we have customers in 80 plus countries, and not everybody wants to pay us in a similar way. There's, of course, direct debit, there's card products, but there's buy now, pay later products. But every country has their own nuanced ways that they process payments. And if you don't offer locally relevant methods, then you're not going to be able to attract customers that are in that given country if they're not able to pay you with the means that they so desire. Similarly, on the money going out space, it's my experience, it's more about offering choice to the recipients. And I'll give you two examples from both Remote and eBay. At Remote, when it comes to paying contractors on the platform, what contractors want is typically choice. Some contractors want to be paid in their local currency. Some want to be paid in a major currency, in a wallet like PayPal, Payoneer, or there's a whole suite of wallets in the market at the moment. And some want to be able to be paid as quickly as possible. Some want to be able to hold balances on the platform. And in order to do that, really, you need to keep in mind about how you can offer choice to those that are going to be paid from your platform. The same was true when I was at eBay. At eBay, we had, of course, buyers paying us, and then we had to pay the eBay's 15 million sellers out in something that in a wallet or an instrument that was relevant to where they live. And again, there's different preferences depending on the markets. There was a big cluster of Chinese sellers on the eBay platform. And exactly because they were doing a lot of business overseas and selling into the US, the European Union, the UK, and Canada, they always preferred to be paid in a major currency and not in Chinese yuan in a local bank account. On the flip side, if you're pushing money to a US seller, they typically want to be paid in US dollars in the local bank account as quickly as possible. And this is just an example to show that really the challenge when it comes to two-sided marketplace is about ensuring how you can offer the most relevant methods around the world to basically meet your customers where they are and make it easy for them to engage with you. Because payments, at the end of the day, are an enabler. They are there to support a broader ecosystem. And if you don't make payments easy, then you're not going to have success with bringing customers and retaining customers on your platform. The last thing I want to touch upon real briefly is if we think about global marketplaces and global platforms that engage in multiple currencies, a challenge that I've seen throughout my current company, my previous company, and a few other fintechs is how do you bring everything together from a reconciliation perspective? As I mentioned before, you might be paying folks in multiple different currencies. There's always a challenge about the internal infrastructure, about bringing everything together, making sure your accounting, tax, billing systems all speak to each other so that you can reconcile your activities and your operations in a way that does not cause mayhem to the internal teams. That is definitely more a little bit on the finance and accounting space, but I think it's definitely worth mentioning as it is a byproduct of payments going global and basically payments defying borders as we move ahead.
It's interesting you mentioned on the money outside on your contractors part. You mentioned that what they want is choice. And in an environment like today where we see really high inflation, and especially in some countries you have hyperinflation like Argentina or Turkey, it's very relevant for someone to hold, a very sensitive financial part
Exactly.
like their salary in a different currency that gives them much higher buying power in their local market.
Yeah, and this is
And
something that we have seen at Remote, for example. And you mentioned Argentina. One of the biggest asks from our customers was to enable salaries in non-local currencies for countries like Argentina, like Turkey, where local employees want to be paid in a major currency so they can be shielded a little bit from the volatility of the local currency. So this is very much a relevant case, even for salary disbursements today.
yeah, I want to drill a little bit deeper into the localization part that you mentioned. And you correctly said that there's no unifying protocol right now across the different countries and as a global standard in terms of the the regulation and the localization needs. So what kind of best practice have you seen for companies that are trying to crack that when it comes to like scaling and launching in new markets that have very different regulatory policies than others?
Yeah, definitely. And the question that it comes down to is the age-old question when it comes to developing a product: Are you building or are you buying? And when it comes to payments, I often find that you need to identify where your basically major markets are, understand whether it makes sense for you to go and get licensed in those markets, and then partner with somebody that is very strong in some of the longer tail markets that you're servicing. Let me elaborate on that a little bit more. Getting a license, payments license, and maintaining it is a very difficult process, right? It's just a cumbersome process that not everybody wants to go through, which is why companies like Stripe and Adyen became the giants that they are today, because they take that pain away from the companies that want to enter a market. Of course, there's always the risk that at some point you're going to outgrow what those companies can do, or you're going to need more nuances in the product you offer, and that's really where you have to think if we're going to build it yourself or you're going to buy it. At Remote, for example, when we think about our contractor products, we focus on two things. One is where are our customers located, and two, what kind of currencies do our contractors want to be paid in? And this kind of optimization is what should help companies understand how they should approach building or buying a product. Once you identify where the majority of your customers are, what countries they're in, you can do an assessment of pros and cons. Does it make sense for me to go after my own licensing? What are the longer term benefits for that? But the answer almost always is going to be partner first. Make sure you have some core infrastructure in place. You understand what it means to intermediate payments, to facilitate payments. And then once you partner with someone that is right for you, figure out if you want to graduate from a partner and go do it yourself. You obviously, once you do it yourself, you have more freedoms in terms of what are some of the products you can offer, what are some of the services you can offer. But that is definitely a secondary step in my mind. The first step is always to find the right partner that works for you and the customers. Now, how you identify that is again a mapping exercise for what your customers want and what they need. There is a very, very large kind of spectrum in the different flavors that payments companies offer today. There are some that specialize in the types of acquiring or the types of pay-in methods that they offer. There are payment orchestration layers that do that, right? And then there's other companies that are more on the pay outside, on the wallet side, that specialize in offering local payments into as many countries as possible to eliminate wires. So really, it's about understanding what your customers want and what you as a company are you trying to optimize for, and then have kind of very clear 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 criteria before you go out into the market and find who the right partner is for you. So again, start with a partner, identify what's important for you. Once you launch with a partner and you have enough demand, you want to offer a little bit more than what the partner can do, then you can think about graduating and into your major markets, go after a payments license, and basically starting building things your own way. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's something consistent that came up with our other Fireside chat, where essentially the takeaway was if you're trying to if you're trying to expand and go into these markets where you don't really have that expertise, it's better to lean on infra players that can help you, and take
Definitely.
away all of that regulatory noise and all of the pain that comes with to figure out how to do it. Rely on those partners and then focus on what's core for your business and for your growth, unless
Exactly.
what you're trying to build is actually what these players are also providing, in
Of
which case
course, of
go and
course.
do the hard thing your own way, right?
And that is a very interesting case. If you're building a payments provider, then yes, what your value proposition is to your customers is exactly that you are licensed. And we've seen that in a boom in the European economic area over the past few years, that you have a large number of companies like Modular, Solaris, Rails, Rapid, that are all licensed in the European economic area. So they went through the trouble of getting their own licenses, of ensuring they have the right certifications, the right KYC programs. And then what they offer to their customers is, hey, I can spin up a bank account for your customers very quickly. I can spin up payment flows for you very quickly and very easily. You just rely on my own infrastructure. And you're absolutely right. If that's what you're trying to do, then there's only one way you can do it. You get your license, you build the infrastructure off of that, and then that's what you sell to the customers. If you're not trying to build a payments company, a payment infrastructure company, then I think that the first step should be partnering with that one, and then deciding if you want to go down that path or not.